Hello there, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Lincoln City's pre-match show, Matchday Live. The Imps travelling to Shrewsbury, knowing a win would take them one step closer to guaranteeing that all-important League One playoff spot. Got a jam-packed 45 minutes or so coming up for you on tonight's show. We'll be hearing from the manager, Michael Appleton, as well as striker Tom Hopper. Shrewsbury Town podcast, Salopcast, will be joining us to give us a lowdown on the opposition as well. And of course, we'll have the team news for you live in around about 15 minutes time. Delighted to say that Gary Hutchinson is back, a rejuvenated Gary Hutchinson with a fresh haircut as well. Gary, nice to see you.
Nice to be back, Sam. Feeling much better, thank you.
Absolutely. It's great to have you back, Gary. Let's just have a quick look back then. We'll look back at the highlights in a second. But in terms of that game at the weekend, it was a frustrating one, wasn't it? But you've written an article this morning that says, let's take a step back and let's just have a look at what we've achieved so far and take a breath. And I think that was probably the right thing to put out.
Yeah, I think the result was a frustrating one. I actually think the performance was an awful lot of positives to take from it. You know, we're playing the best side in the league. Make no mistake, they'll be named champions. They'll be playing in the Championship next season, guaranteed. I think there was a lot of positives. Sometimes you can just look at the result and the setback and feel that it might be a little bit of a blow. I don't really think it was. I think that it's just business as usual. I think we played well. I think yes, it was a penalty which lost us the game. We could have come away with a draw. Just brush yourselves down and move on. 3 big games left.
Yeah, one of those big games is of course tonight. Gary, how big a game is it in the grand scheme of things?
It's a very big game. I actually think probably ones taking place elsewhere are bigger because, you know, it's in our hands. I mean, if we take a point, you would think probably we're going to be safe in the playoffs. I think this is the one that you look at and think it's the one you could probably get the win that we need in. You know, Peterborough is going to be a huge game. I think Wimbledon may still have something to play for. This is the one I look at and think, you know, we win this and then we've got 2 games to prepare for the playoffs. But football's never that straightforward, unfortunately, Sam.
No, it certainly isn't. Gary, you mentioned some of the other sides in the division. They dropped points, didn't they, at the weekend? The likes of Sunderland, Charlton, Blackpool, none of which took all 3. When you look at it, it's just a reminder that no team really, other than Hull at the moment, no team are being that consistent particularly, which obviously bodes well after the result of the weekend for us.
Yeah, it does. I think it bodes well, first of all, in the immediate instance of trying to get into the playoffs. You know, if we were to go back out of form, which you would hope wouldn't happen, you can rest assured that the other teams will not be getting maximum points. And I actually think we've got enough now to get into the playoffs. I don't think that the 72, 73 point mark will be breached. But it's more important in the context of what happens after the 46 games, because if the teams that are in the playoffs have been forced in there, almost like a splinter being forced out of your finger, and we're the team in form and winning games, I think that stands us in good stead for a real chance of Championship football.
As for tonight's opponents, Gary, Shrewsbury, they confirmed their safety by beating Blackpool at the weekend. As I mentioned before, we'll be speaking to a Shrewsbury Town fan and member of the Salopcast podcast later on in the show. For them now, you know, where do they go from here? Because they've confirmed that they'll be staying in League One next season. They obviously can't go up. Do you expect them to take their foot off the gas tonight?
No, absolutely not. I think there'll be players there that are going to be playing for their contracts. I think obviously they've had quite a tough season in terms of the COVID, how badly they've been hit as well. So I think that they'll want to probably prove a point as well to finish as high as they can. Bear in mind, they changed manager halfway through the season, and I think they'll be looking forward to next season, the first full season under their manager, as one with some hope as well. So, it's certainly, there's no easy games at this level. Yes, you want to play teams that don't have anything to play for, but every single time a professional footballer crosses the paint, he's got something to play for.
Well, let's hope the Wi-Fi stays with us and Gary can take us through that game at the weekend then, because you were really impressed with the performance. You mentioned at the top of the show there, you mentioned it in your match report as well, Gary. It was just one of those afternoons, wasn't it, where the result wasn't necessarily quite what we deserved.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably we could have had claims for a draw. I think Hull were the better side. They probably created more chances. But with the deep squad that they have, I expected that when they took the early lead, Lincoln probably 3 or 4 weeks ago capitulate and end up losing that game more heavily. So I thought we showed good character. I thought Hull were very, very well organised across the back. They knew exactly where our threat was. They matched us pound for pound, and we still showed great application to get back in the game with a stunning goal. So there's some games where there's no shame in defeat. You look at Rochdale and Fleetwood where we've lost at home, and you think, hey, we shouldn't have lost those. Look at this one, and I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about at all.
And if we are looking ahead to next season, Gary, and hopefully we'll be joining Hull in the Championship, we've essentially gone toe-to-toe with the Championship side.
We have. The team that kicks off for Hull next season will not be markedly different from the team that played that game, in my opinion. They are a Championship squad in the waiting, bar one or two additions. If we were to go up, I think that there would be changes, not significant changes. But we're a top League One side waiting to prepare for the Championship. And I think this showed it was a barometer of where we are as a club at the moment. And I think it was a positive one despite the result.
The celebrations after the game, if you're following Hull City on Twitter, you'll have seen many pictures from the LNER Stadium, but Hull celebrating there, which I guess sort of looks slightly strange. But from a player's perspective, Gary, will they look at that and think, I want a bit of that myself? Is it almost extra motivation for our players to see their players there and enjoying the fruits of League One promotion?
Yeah, very possibly. And I think it's quite telling. You remember Cheltenham winning the National League in 2016 and we were their opponents and they celebrated the win. And obviously we then got it the next year. Accrington winning League Two in 2018 and then we won it the next year. So we've had that. We've seen those celebrations and then we've gone on and emulated those as well. The hope is that we emulate them within a couple of weeks rather than in a season. But certainly it'll motivate our players. They'll want to go back to Hull and avenge them winning the title at our ground, or promotion at our ground.
As for Lewis Monsma, Gary, another goal for him, another fine finish as well. He's one step closer, or one goal closer, I should say, to double figures, which for any centre-back in any division is pretty good going, isn't it?
It's very good going. I think had he not had the COVID scare through the early part of, or the middle part of the season, he would already be in double figures. Every successful team tends to have a centre back that scores goals. Steve Holmes, Dean Walling did it in the past. We had Luke Waterfall and Sean Raggett do it. Really like Monsma's knack of getting in at the back. I think he's getting back to the form that we saw at the beginning of the season as well. So that bodes very, very well. I think Michael said there's been a lot of interest in him. It would surprise me if he's a Lincoln City player next season. That's how good I think he could be.
Certainly quite the player, isn't he? Right. For anyone watching Matchday Live on Saturday, you'll have seen that I was joined by Liam Scully, who revealed some news regarding season tickets. That was all on weareimps.com earlier this week as well. And the club have put together a really nice VT as well. Take a very quick look at this.
Steeped in tradition, from countless great nights, the home of the Imps, the red and white stripes. The badge on the shirt means so much to so many. Our passionate fans, more vocal than any. From Big Keith to Murphy, remember Freeman and Brown, while Yeo and Reedy wore the goal-scoring crown. Our last time together was Burton at home. A whole year without you. Who would have known? So we're dusting off turnstiles to welcome you back, to cheer on the boys in defense and attack. Now rekindle the fire and let friendships renew. Our spiritual home is ready for you. We are Imps as one.
And the unmistakable voice of Colin McFarlane there. Brilliant VT. Well done to all the media lads for putting that together. Gary, I'll bring you back into the conversation just regarding those season ticket prices. They seem to have gone down really well.
Yes, they do. They've been very well received. Obviously, it's a very, very small increase, which I think we expected. Some increase, but very impressed with those. I think the structure has also gone down very well. The options available, both in terms of payment and in terms of the different levels. So it feels like the club have got it right. They've listened to fans. I think they've reacted in the right way, and I think they understand the way that fans are feeling at the moment, and both financially and towards the club. So yeah, really good work.
Absolutely. All the information regarding that is at weareimps.com right now. Delighted to say that Lincoln City fan and member of Imp Tunes joins us now, Chris Ray. Chris, lovely to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about Imp Tunes and what you do with it.
Oh, it's the most bizarre thing to explain, but I think Gary has to take a lot of the blame because I think it was him that started it off, really. So when Gary brought back the Deranged Ferret fanzine, I think it was about 4 or 5 years now. I remember seeing a copy at a game, And I sent him a message saying, there's no cartoons in it. It needs to have some cartoons. And he sent me a message back saying, well, can you draw? So I tried putting something together, and then I just had another idea after that and another idea after that. And it sort of snowballed into this weird sort of hobby that I have now. But I'm always keen when people seem to like them and want to pay money for them, which I find bizarre. But I've been putting them together over the last couple of years and selling them for to raise money for charity. And obviously this season I've been trying to do it to raise money for the club because at the start of the season it became apparent to me that the club has essentially become that charity, isn't it, with the loss of revenue through ticket sales. So I've been drawing all season through lockdown just to keep myself entertained. But I've been also putting them together into a compilation. I'm going to release them all as a yearbook at the end of the season, and all the money will be going back into the club via sponsorship. So it's just a bit of a thank you, really, because so many people have got on board with it and have been, stumping up money when I put stuff on sale. I think we've raised about £6,000 for various charities over the last couple of years, and about £3,000 for the club. And I'm hoping to do another £3,000 for the club in the summer, but it will only happen if people want to buy my bizarre drawings. So I've tried to do one for every single match this season, which I wouldn't obviously normally have time to do in a normal year. I've been sharing most of them on Twitter and Facebook and places like that, but I'm putting them all together into a little magazine at the end of the season. So if you pay attention to Twitter and the Facebook fan groups, and I think the club might be putting a little story out about it as well. If you're willing to stump £5 for that, it'll all be going back into the club.
Chris, it's phenomenal work and some phenomenal figures there as well in terms of the money you raised. Absolutely, hats off to you. In terms of drawing some Lincoln players, and we'll come on to Gary Hutchinson very shortly, in terms of Lincoln players, who do you enjoy drawing the most?
It was always Boswick, which is why I think I enjoyed drawing Gary a little bit, because I think it's always the beard. Drawing a beard is always fun, but I think this season it's got to be Monsma, with his model looks and those big red lips and big neck. He's basically a cartoon character in real life, isn't he, Lewis Monsma? So it'd have to be him. I love drawing Monsma. And
tell me about immortalising the one and only Gary Hutchinson.
Well, I had to get him back at some point, didn't I? So when I think it was when Appleton went on the Stacey West podcast, I had sort of reimagined what was happening behind the scenes, and I think Gary liked it in the end. I wasn't sure. I avoided him for a little bit after this one went out. Yeah,
we can see Ben Ward alongside him as well. Gary, he's done a good job on the beard there, hasn't he?
He's done a great job. I've had the pleasure of some bespoke drawings from Chris over the time. I think he sent me one for my 40th birthday, if I remember. He certainly sent me one Christmas. I've got one on the wall from my bar. His work is phenomenal. And, I obviously know Chris, but putting all of that aside, he's an absolute credit to this football club. And it's just something else that helps fans feel a little bit more engaged, I think, as well.
Chris, you mentioned the yearbook there. Tell us a little bit more about it and where fans can get their hands on one.
Well, I was hoping by now I might be able to sell it in person, but obviously it's not going to look like I'm going to be able to do that. So I'm going to put the print order in, and I think I'm going to have to do it via eBay. I've been selling most stuff via eBay for the last couple of years. And so I'll be putting a link out there in all the fan groups and on Twitter. And I think I'm going to end up, me and my mate are actually going to deliver all the ones to Lincoln, Waddington, North Hike and Bracebridge. We're going to deliver all those ones by bike to save money on the postage, and then we'll post out all the other ones. So I think we need to lose a little bit of weight after lockdown. I think when we did it last year, we biked about 40 miles each, and I'm not sure we're up to that at the minute. But yeah, feel free to put an order in to make us bike further. That'll be amazing, because it's all money going into the club.
Well, I'm only Lincoln Central. I'm around Broadway, so it shouldn't be too much of an effort for you. But
I think we can make that. That's all right.
Chris, we haven't even had a chance to talk about football and talk about Lincoln City with you. You're clearly a massive fan as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read the Lincoln City team news now, and then I'll get the thoughts of Gary Hutchinson on it and yourself as well. So it is 6 o'clock, which means we can get tonight's Lincoln City team news. Yeah, Michael Appleton making one change to the side that lost to Hull at the weekend. Liam Bridcut comes into the side. He is the captain this evening. The team in full is Alex Palmer, Regan Poole, TJ Omer, Lewis Monsma and Teo Eden. The aforementioned Liam Bridcut tonight's Lincoln City captain alongside Conor McGrandles and George Grant. A front three of Morgan Rogers, Brennan Johnson and Callum Morton. The substitutes bench is Long, Sanders, Jones, Hopper, Scully, Bramall, Anderson. Gary Hutchinson, how great to see once again Liam Bridcut back in the Lincoln City starting 11.
Yeah, it was all too brief last time. Obviously, I always talk up Liam Bridcut. I think having that experience is the balance with the youth. It kind of evens it out a little bit. We've got a great young squad, but I love the way he protects the back four. I think that the back four have actually done very well without him in the last couple of weeks, but he's going to be huge leading the boys tonight, without doubt.
Chris, we've got you on to talk about Imp Tunes. We're going to see how good your punditry is now. Tell us about Liam Bridcut and how pleased you are as a fan to see him back starting this evening.
Well, I think the record speaks for itself, doesn't it? If you look at the stats with him in the team and then with him out of the team, I don't think you can argue with them, really. I think you're right. I think protecting that back four is essential, but I also feel like he directs the other players through the game. It's almost like having another manager on the pitch, because you can see it happening. You can see him talking to the other players, talking to the ref as well. I think he's a massive influence for us, and it's good to see him back, and hopefully he can stick around for the playoffs, fingers crossed.
In terms of a general overview then, Chris, how have you found watching this season? It's been difficult in one sense, hasn't it? Obviously not being there, whether it's home or away, but then the flip side is some fantastic football, some brilliant results, and once again, the city coming together to support its football team. Yeah,
it's certainly the best football I've seen in about 20 odd years, I'd say, of watching Lincoln. It's just been a little bit heartbreaking that we can't see it in person. I mean, one of the biggest reasons I'm a Lincoln fan is that to me, football is something that you go and do live. I would never want to support Liverpool and sit and watch them from an armchair. So it's in a weird sort of way this season, doing it this way has confirmed to me the reasons why I am a Lincoln fan, because I've found it really hard in the last year, just not going to games and seeing friends and family and it being part of your weekend routine. But yeah, it's been fantastic to see, and I just hope this squad gets the reward that it deserves at the end of the season, because they've certainly earned it.
I mean, what an achievement it would be, Chris, to finish in the playoffs, knowing everything we know about this football club, and looking at some of the size of the other teams in the division, the budgets of some of the other teams in the division as well, some of the managers that, okay, we've got a brilliant manager in Michael, but he's going up against some brilliant management teams as well. It would be quite something, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pinch yourself time, really, isn't it, as a Lincoln fan? Was it the 60s, Gary, that we were last in the second tier? It's certainly been a long time, hasn't it? And I mean, I must admit, I don't think I ever really expected to see it in my lifetime, especially when we were down in the conference. I thought maybe we'll have a good season one year and get back into the Football League, and wouldn't that be amazing? But I never expected us to go through League Two the way that we did. And equally this season, I'll be brutally honest, I'd say at the start of the season, my aim was, let's just stay in this league for one more year, so that we can get back and see League One football again. But to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Sunderland, Ipswich, Portsmouth, Oxford, it doesn't feel real. It's very, very strange. And let's just hope we can go up against some bigger teams next year.
Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on tonight's Matchday Live. For fans watching at home, where can they follow you on Twitter?
Imp Tunes. So if you just search for Imp Tunes on Twitter, it should come up.
Nice and simple. Lovely to speak to you, Chris. Enjoy the game.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, mate.
Gary, I'll just ask you about some of the other members of the starting 11 then, in terms of what you make of the front three. Obviously, Anthony Scully dropping out on this occasion, and then Brennan Johnson reverting back to being part of that sort of front three, obviously part of a front four, usually, isn't he? But how do you see that one playing out this evening?
Yeah, it's almost a return to what we know. Bar Tom Hopper, it's probably our first choice team almost, bar Hopper and maybe Joe Walsh. So certainly up front, I think Johnson offers you some real energy out wide. He can cut in. We won't see him link up quite as much with Morgan Rogers, with him being on the opposite flank. But at the same time, with McGrandles and Grant behind them, we're oozing creativity. I'm actually quite excited, because this is probably the first time that we will have seen the rejuvenated Conor McGrandles, the post-Christmas Conor McGrandles, who's been excellent. A fit again George Grant, Morgan Rogers firing, Brennan Johnson. I mean, it's mouth-watering if we get it right tonight.
Certainly is. Right then, let's get the thoughts of the manager, Michael Appleton, who was asked by BBC Radio Lincolnshire the importance of qualifying for the playoffs at the earliest opportunity. This is what he had to say.
Yeah, in an ideal world, absolutely 100%, that would be the best case scenario. It doesn't normally always pan out that way, and there's always twists and turns, as we know. Sometimes when you want to make life difficult for yourself, you tend to make it as as difficult as it could possibly be, and we don't want that. So if we can recreate the performance levels that we created on Saturday, we give ourselves a great chance of winning.
Last time you played Shrewsbury away from home, it was a comfortable victory down there, but much changed side for both teams. Are you expecting a similar type of game tomorrow?
No, I mean, obviously, they've had, we spoke about the issues that we've had in terms of injuries and COVID, and certainly from COVID, they've had some serious issues with COVID, none more so, and obviously the manager who's still obviously not well at all, and I send my best wishes to Steve and hope he recovers soon enough. But it'll be a motivated side in terms of, clearly there'll be players within that group who will be out of contract and looking to get new contracts, people who will be looking to get in the shop window looking for moves. So we're mindful of the fact that because they can't go down, they're in that position where they're playing with a little bit of freedom, which makes them dangerous.
George Grant came on as sub last week and then started on Saturday and got an hour out of it. Are Tom Hopper and Liam Bridcut in a similar place in the fact that obviously Liam came on Saturday, but could he start tomorrow and could Tom start?
They could. Whether that's a sensible thing to do, obviously I'll make that call over the next 48 hours. If they did start, again, very similar to George, they certainly won't be able to finish the game. Been in constant dialogue with the medical team, very, very conscious of making sure that we've got them for an absolute minimum of 4 games, hopefully 7. But yeah, I mean, it's one of them where the last thing I want to do is sort of play them tomorrow, over risk it, and then all of a sudden they're not available for the next 3 games.
Yeah, Michael Appleton speaking to Rob Makepeace from BBC Radio Lincolnshire there. One of those 2 players starts tonight, George Grant. Gary, great to see George once again back in the starting 11.
Yeah, it is definitely. I mean, he's probably our player of the season, even with the absence. He was a real shining light in the first half. He's been a big loss. No coincidence that our drop in form kind of coincided with him being out of the side as well as Liam Bridcut. We look more creative with George Grant in the side. He makes us a little bit more flexible. For instance, if Liam comes off after 60 minutes and George stays on, he will likely play the 6 role, and we're likely to bring on somebody more in the attacking midfield. So it's great to have him back. He's an influential player, he's an experienced player, and he's a player that I think strikes fear into the hearts of opposition. That's why he was named in the FIFA team of the season, isn't it? That's how well he's done.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. You mentioned the relationship there on the pitch between Liam Bridcut and George Grant, and what one of them playing in the side does for the other in terms of the formation. Where does Conor McGrandles fit into this then? How much extra space is he afforded when you've got the likes of Liam Bridcut in one position, slightly more defensively, and George in that more number 10 or at least attacking role?
It's an interesting one because I'm actually quite excited to see this demographic, because I think Conor has changed a little bit since the beginning of the season. I think at the beginning of the season he was the nearly man, so it was very much James Jones, George Grant, Liam Bridcut, and Conor was the one coming in and out. And I think he's been a revelation since he's been back from injury. I mean, he's been sensational. He's been consistent. Even when we've played badly, people have said, "Well, Conor McGrandles had a good game." He's very much a grafter. He can go box to box. I think what he gives you is the flexibility that if a team's coming on to us, he's a player that can sit next to Liam Bridcut and almost play the double sixes, as I call them, the kind of double central midfield role. But then when we're attacking, he also plays alongside George Grant, and we're in a more kind of traditional 4-3-3 with 2 attacking midfielders. So I think Conor's almost like he's like elastic in the middle there. He can twist and adapt to the game as we need to. And with his form at the moment as well, we're talking about Liam Bridcut and George Grant. Conor McGrandles, I keep saying he's been outstanding, absolutely outstanding. So I think it's our full strength midfield today, our first choice midfield without doubt.
Interesting stuff, Gary. It should be a really, really exciting game, shouldn't it, this evening away at Shrewsbury Town. We'll be speaking to a Shrewsbury fan, a member of the Salopcast podcast, in around about 10 minutes' time. In the meantime, let's get the thoughts of Tom Hopper now. He was asked just how happy he is to be back on the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was always the concern when sort of getting the news with the results of the scan that you're fearing the worst, I guess. But like I said at the start with Mike, the physio, and Luke, that I see that as a challenge, and we'll try and knock that time down and get back in quicker than expected. So, a testament to them and the medical team and the work we've done, and hopefully now keep going.
And how is that when you're seeing so many games being played and you're just not able to be a part of them, even though you really want to be?
I mean, I've had it before, unfortunately, when I done my ACL. So I've watched a lot more games than this time. So this was a walk in the park compared to that. And luckily, we're fighting at the right end of the table for this as well. So it's obviously not where you want to be. But you want to be involved in help out the lads. But the boys are picking up results, and it's brilliant to be able to enjoy that.
Yeah, Callum Morton's coming in your place. About a fortnight ago, we spoke to him. He says he's not used to being the battering ram. How do you feel he's got on?
I think he's been spot on. He's obviously said that himself, but he's got many different qualities, and it's probably a role that he's probably not had to do before. But one he's taken to brilliantly, and you can see he's enjoying it now as well. He's sort of kicking on every game and relishing that battle.
And do you find that your body gets used to that on a Saturday afternoon or a Tuesday night, getting bruises and getting kicks and everything?
I guess to a certain extent, it can be a bit of a lonely role at times, especially when you see yourself coming up against three defenders in the back five or so, which teams do seem to do against us. And you have to take the hits, and it's just unfortunately part and parcel of it. But like I said, Callum stood up to that brilliantly, and he's improving that every game.
Yeah, the pre-match thoughts of Tom Hopper there. Gary, it's great to hear fellow strikers supporting each other, isn't it? Very rarely are we going to see Tom Hopper and Callum Morton certainly start up front together. So they are essentially vying for the same place, but there's clearly only support there because, essentially it's in the best interests of the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think it's kind of the team's ethos as well, isn't it? We've got a smattering of experienced players, your Liam Bridcuts, your George Grants, your Tom Hoppers, who's experienced despite still being a relatively young man. And their role is not just to perform well for the first team, but it's to help ensure that the exciting young squad reaches its potential. So Callum Morton's going to come in and look up to a striker like Tom Hopper, who's played plenty of senior football around the divisions. He's going to learn from him, and he's obviously going to want to be encouraged as well. And I think Tom's the sort of player now who's got to a level of maturity where he understands both his role on the field and off the field. And he's what I would call a key general for Michael Appleton outside of the captaincy pair of Bridcut and Grant. And then Joe Walsh and Adam Jackson as well. They form the nucleus of the experience, and they're the ones that are kind of also entrusted with helping our young players on.
Certainly do. Right then, let's have a look at what happened when the two sides met earlier on in this season in the Papa John's Trophy. It was a pretty good result for the Imps, wasn't it? Here's a reminder of the action. Yeah, quite some night indeed at the New Meadow, wasn't it? The free-flowing football well and truly on show there. Gary, how big is it to have a result like that away at a stadium that you're playing again here tonight, how big is it that those memories will sort of, what's the question I'm trying to ask you? This is an awfully worded question, is it? What I'm trying to say is, how important are those recent memories, good memories to have? Or something like that.
I understood you, Sam. We've got telepathy, mate. You're okay. Yeah, yes and no, because it's a very, very different game today, and I think a week after that, we were shown how different a game can be, because I think it was 7 days they beat us 1-0 and they were a completely different unit. Very many different players now. I think they've got a very different ethos again. So yeah, it'd be nice for one or two of those players to have had that confidence. When you think Zach Elbouzedi was the star there, and he's obviously out on loan at Bolton at the moment, it seems like a lifetime ago. I think it's more important probably to have the positive memories from the last 5 or 6 games, the performances, the wins against the likes of MK Dons, and going into this league encounter. So it's going to be a challenge. It is nice that we've already been and won there earlier in the season, but I think probably that doesn't mean a great amount to the players.
Hopefully my questions will be slightly better to our next guest, Ollie Warner, who joins us from the Shrewsbury Town podcast, Salopcast. Ollie, lovely to have you on the show tonight. You're safe, which I imagine is a big relief. Congratulations. How are the emotions?
Yeah, we kind of creeped over the line in the end. But yeah, we're very, very pleased that we're finally safe. It's been a very, very strange season. Obviously, we started really badly, had that high, including when we obviously got that victory away at you guys. And then obviously, unfortunately, we got hit by COVID. And yeah, we haven't had the manager around for a very, very long time. So it's been a very unusual season.
Yeah, I thought certainly from a Lincoln City perspective with Steve Cottrell, because it has been so difficult, both from a personal point of view for Steve, of course, but for your club, like you mentioned, the amount of ups and downs you've had to deal with.
Yeah, it's been really crazy. We had an awful start to the season. We won 1 game out of 13, and then we had a change. And yeah, within a few days actually, we had Cottrell in charge, and then we had that really great run. And then we got hit by COVID, and the numbers have never really come out. But from what I've heard and what I can gather, we're probably one of the worst teams in the country to hit by COVID. Obviously, it's only us and Sheffield Wednesday have had their manager in hospital, and we had a lot of players. And sometimes I think we forget actually about the impact on the players. We certainly, obviously, front of mind having the manager not being there. But yeah, it's been an absolutely crazy season. And I think it's full testament to Aaron Wilbraham, who was an assistant manager for 16 days, and then he took the full job with the manager on speakerphone and working from home and supporting him. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for those guys.
The question I put to Gary earlier on in the show, Ollie, was regarding, obviously you are safe now, brilliant result at the weekend. Do you expect your side to take their foot off the gas now with a few games left to go?
No. We've got a lot of players out of contract. And if they're not fighting for a contract at our club, they'll be fighting for a contract at another club. I think also we've got quite a lot of good senior pros in the squad. Ollie Norburn, Josh Vella, Dave Edwards, Ebanks Landor. So we've got a good kind of core there. And I don't think they'll want us to kind of let off. I think we probably actually quite enjoy. We've had some big cup runs in the last few years. And we've got a squad that likes to cause an upset. So there's absolutely no way we'll give you a hard time, an easy game tonight. We'll be full throttle, and we want to get those 3 points, and we'll want to finish as high as we can in the table.
Let me bring my telepathic pundit in and see if Gary's got a question for you regarding one of your players starting tonight.
Well, actually, you just mentioned a player I really admire, and I just wonder kind of how he's fixed for the future. Ollie Norburn, he's somebody that I've seen us play against regularly, he scores against us. How influential is he for you?
Yeah, he's a key player. He's our captain. He's not a typical captain in the sense that he's not like really, really loud, and he's not that kind of captain. He's kind of a captain that leads through example. But we all hear really good things about how he performs and kind of manages the squad off the pitch at the training ground. He's a good player. Ollie Norburn is a funny player, but I think because we signed him for money from Tranmere, Shrewsbury Town fans have always had quite high expectations of Ollie Norburn. Has he always lived up to those expectations? Possibly not. But when Ollie Norburn is kind of like flying, we really, really do fly. And he was absolutely superb on Saturday against Blackpool. And he was probably one of our man of the match. If it wasn't for Pennington getting man of the match in terms of scoring the goal and being a central defender, Ollie Norburn for me was second. He was absolutely superb. He's a very, very good box-to-box player. He's very good defensively, really good at winning the ball back. Not always the best at creating assists, and that's probably something he'd like to work on. But yeah, for me, he's definitely up there as among one of the best, most consistent midfielders in League One.
And some of those players you mentioned there as well, Ollie, Pennington, Ebanks, Landell, and the aforementioned Norburn as well. They're all starting this evening. I don't know if you've had a chance. I presume you have to see your starting 11 this evening. Is it pretty much what you expected? Is it one of your stronger 11s? It looks it on paper.
Yeah, it's really difficult to predict the Shrewsbury Town lineup. Like, I had no idea what formation. So on Saturday we played 4-1-4-1, and now we're playing 3 at the back again. It is a real lottery to kind of guess the team. The only team players you kind of know are going to play is Ogbeta, Pennington, and Ebanks, Josh Vella and Norburn. Other than that, you've got absolutely no idea who's going to start. And yeah, Lover's come back in, Walker's come back in, and I expect us to play 3-5-2 tonight with Main and Worley up front.
So basically, absolutely anything could happen. Ollie, we always finish with the score prediction. How do you see it going this evening?
I think it'd be an entertaining score draw, so I'm going to go for 2-2.
Interesting stuff. Ollie from Salopcast, really appreciate you joining us on tonight's Matchday Live.
No, guys, thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Ollie.
That's Ollie from Salopcast. You can follow him on Twitter as well with all the Shrewsbury Town and no doubt League One news as well. Gary's going for an entertaining 2-2 draw. I won't ask you for your score prediction yet, but I mean, judging by what Ollie's saying there, it could be a case that we don't quite know what's going to happen this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think considering the season that they've had as well, he was quite upbeat, not in tone, but certainly in what he was saying, and saying that he's going to get a draw, for instance, against a team hunting for the playoffs shows a certain belief in the side. I quite like that. I also think he's spot on when he says about the effects of COVID. You know, they weren't a bad side when they came to Sincil Bank. They were organised. They're a spoiling side. They'll stop you playing rather than playing their own game. I seem to think they beat us 1-0, Doncaster 1-0. They went on a little bit of a run. So I think it'll be tight. If they play 3 at the back, I think chances for us will be at a premium. And I think with Bridcut back and our defence playing the way they are, I think chances will be at a premium at both ends. But remains to be seen.
If you're only just joining us, let me run you through tonight's Lincoln City starting 11. Michael Appleton making one change to Saturday's game against Hull at the LNER Stadium. Liam Bridcut starts this evening. He is the captain. Alex Palmer, Regan Poole, TJ Omer, Lewis Monsma and Teo Eden. Bridcut, McGrandles, Grant, Rogers, Johnson and Morton. It is then the substitutes bench as Long, Sanders, Jones, Hopper, Scully, Bramall and Anderson. In terms of that back four then, Gary, obviously, I mean, we've said it for the past few weeks, haven't we? But TJ and Lewis now, it's got to that stage where you see both of them start and you think, okay, really young lads, but they've looked so sort of set there, really, haven't they? Yes, they conceded a couple of goals to Hull at the weekend, but ultimately it's the best side in the division. You know, they're doing pretty well.
I think they actually look more settled than Lewis and Adam Jackson did for a while. I do think there's many factors in play. I think the fact that Lewis, I looked to me like he suffered from his spell out. I think it's taken him a while to get back to his best, but I think he's looking like he's there now. I also think with TJ, primarily we'd seen him at right back. He played at centre half, I think, in the EFL Trophy, but very, very few opportunities to do so in the league. I think he seized that opportunity. It's his natural position, and TJ's a special player. He's a quality young player. I think he'll be in the Championship next season, no matter what. So they've both got a lot of quality about them. And I do think that we found the right formation just in front of them to offer that protection over the last couple of games, something that will continue today with Liam Bridcut back. So I don't expect any change in their performance levels from the last couple of games.
Well, Shrewsbury Town and Lincoln City, obviously not the only game taking place in League One this evening. If we take a look at some of the League One fixtures this evening, we'll have to start with Accrington Pompey, won't we? Gary, Pompey looking to bounce back. I think Danny Cowley has said something along the lines of, we have to treat it as cup finals going into this last period now. It's a period to be excited about, but obviously the pressure is on Pompey really at Accrington tonight, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, Accrington are very, very outsiders. I think they're probably ruled out, all but mathematically. But they haven't been beaten in 3 games. I seem to think they've held Sunderland at the weekend 3-3. What you get with Accrington, you always get hard work. You know that they're difficult to play against. You know that they can always score a goal. Portsmouth have got to play them twice. And I think I heard Danny Cowley say they need 7 points from 9 to be in the playoffs. I think they need 9 from 9. I think by the time the games are finished tonight, I think that will be an impossibility. I can see that being a draw. Accrington, they surprise me constantly.
If we bring that graphic back in and see what else is kicking off in League One this evening, Sunderland Blackpool. Blackpool off the back of the defeat, and Sunderland obviously dropping points at the weekend as well. How do you see that one playing out then? Because on paper, it does look like a game that could really affect us. Do you think it could?
It looks like it, doesn't it? You know, they're either side of us in the league, and you think one result one way can really benefit us. But in actual fact, probably not an awful lot. I think that we're fighting for a playoff place. So, you know, the whole automatic thing, I think, is gone after the weekend. So then you say, well, if you finish third or fourth, you play the team in fifth or sixth, or whatever the score between Sunderland and Blackpool, it doesn't massively affect where we are. I actually don't think that game has huge repercussions for Lincoln. I think the results at the likes of Portsmouth or how teams like Charlton do in the coming weeks are the ones that we need to be looking at. I think Sunderland and Blackpool, to all intents and purposes, are going to be in the playoffs with us. I think the only thing that you would look at is which of those teams is going out of form, ready for us to come into form. So, on paper, it looks like a big game for Lincoln, but in actual fact, I won't be paying any attention to that at all.
Absolutely not, because you'll be paying attention to tonight's big game, Lincoln City against Shrewsbury Town. Gary, I'm going to absolutely put you on the spot. If we bring the League One table back in, and look, I don't say this very often, but feel free if you don't want to answer this next question. But presumably, and if we do finish in the playoffs, out of the remaining sides, which would you least like to play and which would you most like to play? And if you don't want to answer the latter, I understand with the way that social media works these days, but I'll put it out to you with a couple of minutes left to go on tonight's show anyway.
No, I'll happily answer it if I get asked a question. The thing is that you've got to play everybody. You know, you've got to beat two teams out of the other three in the playoffs. I think the team that comes into form could potentially be Charlton Athletic. I think, you know, they've got a couple of games in hand there, only 2 points behind Oxford. I expect Charlton to take a playoff place. I think Charlton, Blackpool, us and Sunderland. I don't know. A lot would depend on how Charlton do over the next couple of games and how we do there. But I get a feeling that they're a team on the up. I think Nigel Adkins has got them playing different football. I think they've always had a decent squad. On current form, you would want to play Blackpool. You know, we've beaten them once this season. I thought we were decent against them, coming back against them the other week as well. You know, I'm not saying Blackpool's an easy game. There are no easy games in the playoffs. But I think if you were to ask the question, who do you not want to play, to anybody else in the playoffs, they're going to say Lincoln City on current form. And I think that's the crucial element. It's not who do we want to play or who do we not want to play. It's who do they not want to play. And nobody will want to play Lincoln City with the players coming fit, us getting into form and winning games. Of course, that really does depend on us winning tonight.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, form is such a huge thing. If we go back to, what was it, 2006-7 season, and Bristol Rovers at the time, and wasn't it? They were around Christmas, they were fighting relegation, just snuck into the playoffs. So, and we know what happened then. It is all about form when you go into a period like this.
It is, yeah. I'm the sort of person, I don't pay a lot of attention to form during the season. If you're 16 games in, form doesn't matter, because, you know, you've got 5-6 games to correct your form, 5-6 games after that to go out of form. It doesn't really matter entirely. But when you get to this stage of the competition and then you're looking at the playoffs, form does matter. And you're quite right. We were automatic promotion contenders the whole season in 2006-07. We tumbled out of form spectacularly after Christmas. Bristol Rovers hit form, and what do you know? Because there's not actually a great amount between teams in the top 6 and, let's say, 15th to 16th. In terms of quality, there's very little between teams. It's all about how you're organised, and it's all about how confident you are on the day. So I do think that form now is of huge importance, which is why when you look at the games we've got left, I think Peterborough, Charlton, Wimbledon, Shrewsbury, I would say of those 4 games, if you can take something like 8 points, if you can win 2 and draw 1, win 2 and draw 2, then teams are going to look at us and go, nobody wants that, especially having played Peterborough and Charlton in the run into the playoffs. That Charlton game could be crucial.
Ollie, the Shrewsbury Town fan, says an entertaining draw, an entertaining score draw this evening. Gary, do you agree with him?
No, I don't. I think it will be, I'm not going to say unentertaining, because Lincoln are never unentertaining, but I think it will be a game of few chances. And I think the one team that will take that one chance is Lincoln City. I'm going to go for another 1-0 away win.
We hope you're right, Gary. Really appreciate your time on tonight's Matchday Live. Myself and Gary will be back this time next week when the Imps play the aforementioned Charlton Athletic, another massive game in League One. No Matchday Live on Saturday. In terms of tonight's game, do enjoy it. Of course, you get your match pass by going to weareimps.com/ifollow, and fingers crossed the Imps can get one step closer to guaranteeing a playoff spot. Bye for now.